try to bait them into shooting, then roll out to hit them back. When blocking damage, consider your turret position and hull shape. For example, a pike nose provides maximum protection in the upper glacis in this position. When the tank faces the enemy directly, you only need to turn it if the enemy is aiming at your lower glacis. Tanks with rear turret placement are usually well suited for side scraping, but perform worse on uneven ground. Some vehicles have good armor in the lower glacis, which allows them not only to side scrape, but also block damage with their hull front at an angle. We mentioned baiting for a shot a few times. You can do this with any part of your tank that the enemy can't penetrate. It can even be your rear, as long as it's at a sharp angle. These tactics will let you safely fire at an unloaded enemy. Brawl is a situation when two tanks are at fist-fighting distance from each other. In the brawl, you will often not be able to depress your gun toward the enemy's lower glacis, so it's important to hit other weak spots such as cupolas, the turret ring, driver's hatch, and so on. Also, prevent the enemy from hitting yours. You can also block damage without any cover. To do so, players usually angle their vehicle to increase its front armor. At the same time, it's useful to dance with your hull left and right, constantly changing the effective armor. Don't angle it too much, or the enemy will penetrate the side, or worse, the wheel. This way, you'll not only take damage, but also be immobilized. So sometimes it's better to roll at the enemy head-on. When your tank is stationary, it's vulnerable, and if your track is destroyed in a crossfire, it's best to use a repair kit. Sometimes it's worth saving, since it repairs other modules such as the engine, fuel tanks, and ammo rack. Now let's talk about how to increase your chances of survival before battle. Of all the crew perks, repairs is the most useful for survival. It's one of the most important perks for all tanks, except for SPGs and sniper TDs. With repairs, your destroyed track will be fixed much quicker, letting you find cover even when the repair kit is cooling down. Another important perk is firefighting. It will come in handy if you play with a food consumable instead of a fire extinguisher. The safe stowage perk will help tanks that often lose their hats. Other secondary perks decrease the chance of fire, improve the dispersion of a damaged gun, allow the commander to replace injured crew members, and so on. They can also be trained, but not first. There's also equipment that improves survival. The most useful piece is improved hardening. It's pretty much a must-have for heavy tanks and assault TDs, and can sometimes be useful for medium tanks too. Improved hardening increases a vehicle's HP, and, equally importantly, boosts track's HP. With this equipment, the enemy will have to fire at your rollers 2 or even 3 times to immobilize your vehicle. Vehicles that are prone to engine, fuel tank, or ammo rack damage can be equipped with improved configuration. It gives a number of useful bonuses, including higher internal module durability. Spall liner can also be useful in certain situations. The experimental Survival Improvement Suite combines the bonuses of improved hardening and configuration. So, we learned how to block damage, trained repairs, and mounted improved hardening. Time to battle. You roll to your position and get caught in the crossfire. When the enemy attacks from different directions, you'll have trouble blocking damage. Change your position and hide from all opponents except the one you're firing at. You can't survive the crossfire. In another battle, you might be able to block damage perfectly, but an enemy with a high caliber will load HE shells. These shells always cause damage, even when they don't penetrate armor. If an HE shell hits a thick armor plate, it won't cause much damage. But if you try to side scrape with thin sides, it can cause a lot more. Remember that if you can penetrate your opponent in return, you have the upper hand. You'll damage them more with penetrations than they will you with HE shells. If the enemy has strong armor, don't just stand there and absorb damage. Change your position or wait for a better chance to shoot. This also applies to enemy fire from distant bushes or artillery. If you're under fire and can't hit them back, you can change position or remain unspotted for some time. The enemy will be distracted by your allies, while you continue firing. To take less damage from artillery, remember that it can't reach you everywhere. Pay attention to how much of it there is at the start of the battle. If there are 2 or 3 SPGs against you, it's probably better to use a position covered from their fire, or just accept the fact that sometimes you can't avoid artillery damage. Finally, the most important question: do you always need to try to block damage? No. In addition to armor, your vehicle has a pool of hit points that you need to trade. There's nothing wrong with taking a hit if it means you get to finish off an opponent, or taking 400 HP of damage and dishing out 750 in return. You can intentionally receive damage to unload the opponent and give your allies a chance to destroy them. Or you can cover an ally with your vehicle to let them survive. All in all, no matter how reliable your side-scraping or hull-down position is, you don't always need to do it until the end of battle. There comes a time in almost every battle when you need to forget about blocking damage and just roll forward. That's it for today. Show this video to your friends who are still side-scraping at a straight angle. Next time, we'll talk about the view range system. See you soon. Hello, tankers. Today you'll learn how to see everything and be the eyes and ears of your team. Deploy your telescopes. We won't cover all spotting mechanics in detail in this video. We already did that in the video that will appear in the info card and description. The information there is still relevant. Today we'll talk briefly about the mechanics and pay more attention to how to use them. Sixth Sense is the ability that all commanders have by default. It shows that your vehicle has been spotted. Not immediately, but 3 seconds after you've been spotted. The standard disappearing time after you've been spotted is 10 seconds. Signal range is the distance at which vehicle icons will be marked on the minimap. Your range is added to that of your allied vehicles, so signal range isn't usually a problem. But sometimes it may prevent you from having full map information, especially in low-tier battles. The draw circle is the radius within which you can see vehicles spotted by you or your allies. The view range circle is the radius within which you can theoretically spot enemy vehicles yourself. The maximum view range distance is 445 meters, but you're not guaranteed to spot the enemy at this range, since your view range is always reduced by their concealment. We'll talk more about that in our next episode. Concealment is the reason to boost your view range higher than the maximum 445 meters. You won't spot enemies beyond that range, but additional view range meters will work to expose them. So, 2 tanks with view ranges of 445 and 500 meters will have the same maximum view range, 445 meters. But the tank with a view range of 500 meters will find a concealed opponent much earlier. Vegetation significantly improves concealment. The more bushes between you and your enemy, the harder it is to spot them. If you're closer than 15 meters to a bush, the vegetation in your sights will be semi-transparent, and you'll get concealment from the bush without any penalty to your view range. But if you move 15 meters away from it, you won't be able to spot anymore, but you'll probably be able to shoot risk-free. Bushes only lose their masking properties after a shot within a 15-meter radius. Even the best concealment and thickest vegetation won't help at a distance closer than 50 meters. At that distance, you're guaranteed to spot any vehicle. And they're guaranteed to spot you. Players have nicknamed this mechanic the X-ray. Keep it in mind, because X-ray is the only way to spot tanks behind solid cover. It's also important to know that tanks see with view range ports. All vehicles have 2 of them. To spot an enemy, you need either of your view range ports to see any of its visibility checkpoints. so you can't spot with your hull. Keep that in mind when rolling out from behind a corner. Here's one example of how you can use this knowledge. If you are not spotted and the enemy is about to go behind cover, you can wait until they're half there and then shoot. That way you won't be spotted after the shot, since their view range ports will already be behind cover. That's if their friends aren't around, of course. And if the obstacle is destructible, you'll have to destroy it to see the enemy. Makes sense, right? Remember that other vehicles or their wrecks are not an obstacle for view range. You can't shoot through them, but you can spot an enemy through them. You can also check a bush for enemies without even spotting them. Aim at the bush and raise the camera as high as possible. Tactical view will help. You can enable it in the game settings. Fire and look to see if the shell hits something behind the bush. Watch the tracer closely. If it disappears in the bush, it's either a magic shell or it's hit an enemy tank. But it's easier to spot an enemy the good old-fashioned way. To spot well, you need good view range. It's most important for light tanks, but can come in handy for other vehicle types too. View range will help medium tanks carry out scout duties when there's no light tank on the flank. Tank destroyers with good view range can spot targets for themselves more often. View range helps heavy tanks avoid taking damage from nowhere. Keep in mind that your view range is reduced when your observation devices are damaged, your crew is stunned, or your commander is injured. You have a repair kit and first aid kit to help, but only use them when you really need maximum view range. Who knows what your enemy might break with the next shot? How can you improve your scout capabilities? The recon, situational awareness, and Brothers in Arms perks will improve view range. All three are useful and should be trained. There are not only classic perks, of course, but many other interesting and useful ones too. Experiment. Consumables. Food consumables increase view range significantly. Equipment. Coated optics is a timeless classic that provides a big boost to view range distance. Optics should be mounted on almost any light tank as a priority. It won't hurt to equipping a medium tank or a TD with it either. Commander's vision system is almost as important for scouts. First of all, it decreases the enemy's bonus to concealment from vegetation. And since tanks often hide in bushes, you'll have more chance of spotting them. Secondly, it decreases enemy concealment when they're on the move. It's useful against all vehicle types, but especially against light tanks, because usually they don't have a penalty to concealment when on the move, but they do with Commander's vision system. Improved radio set keeps the enemy you spotted visible for 2 more seconds. It also reduces the time you remain spotted by 2 seconds. It can be useful, but it's not very popular. Binocular telescope is good for passive play from one bush. It improves the view range more than coated optics. But it only works when your tank is stationary, and optics always works, making it more versatile. Experienced scouts choose optics. However, binocular telescope can complement optics. For example, on mid-tier vehicles where you can't mount Commander's vision system. This way, you'll become even better tailored to doing runs from one bush to another. Finally, implementation. Your main task is to survive and spot hidden enemies for as long as they're on the battlefield. You won't help your team by spotting everyone at the start of battle, then returning to your garage. Your team won't have a scout for the rest of the battle, while the enemy team will. But don't stay too far behind either. When playing a light tank, remember that vegetation and enemy concealment always reduce your view range. To spot effectively, get as close as possible to enemy positions. But beware of enemy scouts and proximity spotting. The key for a scout isn't meters of view range, but how you use them. The most important thing is your position. Knowing initial routes and key bushes for spotting enemies is half the battle. Watch how experienced tankers play and memorize their positions. The other half is your ability to switch positions at the right time. Monitor the situation in battle to retreat or advance when necessary. You need to stay as close to the enemy as possible, while also staying alive. That's it for today. Show this video to your friends who light the enemy up nice and bright, but not for long enough. Next time, we'll talk about concealment. See you soon. Hello, tankers. Today, we'll talk about concealment. Wrap your camo nets tight around you. Let's begin. This video overlaps with the previous episode about the view range system. We won't go over all the mechanics again, since we did that in the previous video. You can find it in the info card and description. Today, we'll talk more about how to improve and use your concealment. But first, let's go through the main terms. If your tank has been spotted, you'll see a warning light bulb, but only 3 seconds later. Keep in mind that that's more than enough time for your turret to be hit. When the enemy stops spotting you, you'll be visible for 10 more seconds. Always remember that. But how do you remain unspotted? Every vehicle has its own concealment value. It affects what penalty the enemy will receive to their view range value. So whether you're spotted or not depends not only on your concealment, but also on the enemy's view range. Concealment depends on the vehicle size and type. As a rule, light tanks have the best concealment. For medium tanks, it's average. And heavy tanks, well, hide and seek is not for them. Tank destroyers usually have good concealment, but only when stationary. Concealment heavily depends on what your tank is doing. If it's stationary, the value is at its highest. If it's moving, then it's significantly lower. Concealment when stationary and on the move is only the same for light tanks. Finally, when you shoot, your concealment drops to its lowest. When you're hiding, shooting is the best way to reveal yourself. Bushes provide a great concealment bonus and allow you to hide almost right under the enemy's nose. To do that, you need to cover all your vehicle's visibility checkpoints in or behind the bush. The crowns of trees work in the same way, but only the crowns. You can't hide a tank behind a tree trunk, so it's best to fell it in advance. This rule doesn't apply to conifer trees, since they have low crowns. You can leave them standing. Both trees and bushes are divided into 2 types, with and without foliage. The concealment bonus from leafless vegetation is only half the one leafy vegetation provides, but it's a bonus nonetheless, so remember this difference. If there's more than one bush between you and your opponent, their bonuses add up. Double bushes work better than single ones. The only time vegetation doesn't cut your view range is if you're close enough to it that it's transparent in your reticle. That said, the concealment parameter is decreased for vegetation within 15 meters around you when you fire. Putting it simply, you can spot enemies when you're close to bushes, but will be spotted yourself after shooting. If you roll